fail. High-spending, cash-strapped states, they want another federal bailout, but the best medicine for these high rollers would simply be to let them fail. Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. California, well, it's on the verge of needing a bailout, and dozens of other states are also in the financial ropes. But instead of hiking everybody's taxes to give them even more money to high-spending states, some at Forbes say, let them fail. Let's go in focus with Bill Baldwin, Victoria Barrett, and Neil Weinberg, along with Mike Ozanian, Quentin Hardy, and Jack Gage. And Jack, let's start with you. Tough medicine, right?
Yeah, David, absolutely. Look, they can't go bankrupt per se, but we can let them fail by not extending to them federal money or municipal money from the bottom up. This is a problem where they've been given standing aid count after standing aid count. I think it's time to throw in the towel, let them tend to taxpayer ruins before they do serious damage down the road. Look at New Jersey as a great example, where they've already let 220,000 residents in the last 6 years leave the state because of high tax burdens they can't afford anymore.
Right. And Quentin, responsible states like Texas don't want to bail out irresponsible states like California.
Well, when they fail, don't you think they're going to get bailed out? Isn't that how this stuff works? I mean, to me, the problem here is people forget bond means promise. You're giving someone a bond to them. You know, you're creating this promise and obligation. The whole country seems to think you can just walk away from your promises now, and I don't think that's good, possible, or, you know, in any way healthy for the future of the country.
But should we bail them out, Victoria, or let them fail?
No, we shouldn't. And Quentin, you could still honor those bonds. You're still going to get tax revenue. What you could do is go in and do some severe cost cutting. California desperately needs it. You look at our $42 billion deficit. You look at our state pensions, which by some estimates are underfunded by $200 billion. That's because you can retire after 30 years and get 90% of your salary. That's a real sweet deal, but it can't last unless we want to see our taxes skyrocket even further.
Mike,
cut costs.
Bail them out or let them fail?
I don't think you do either. I think I go along with Victoria. I think you force them to cut spending. Look, if they default on their municipal bonds, you're just going to hurt taxpayers in the future because they're going to be charged higher rates when they borrow in the future.
So if they can't pay on their bonds, do you have a federal bailout?
No, you don't have a federal bailout. The reason why Schwarzenegger is in the trouble he's in, David, is because he refused to take on the unions. That's the same reason why New York State is having the problems it's having.
All right, but very simply, do we have federal taxpayers bail out failing states like California?
Not. Now, listen, there's no Chapter 11 for states, but states can just stop paying their bills, or as New York City deftly called it when it had a default 34 years ago, a moratorium on paying the bondholders. Let's put the cards on the table. Let's let bondholders accept the reality, which is that the $100,000 a year pensions for those state employees are very well protected, very well secured, and the supposedly secured bondholders are not secured. They're not going to get their money back.
Neil, Forbes had a great piece not long ago on how these long-term pension plans by the states are bankrupting states. You got to make them face the music, right?
Right. You know, you don't want to demonize policemen or teachers or anybody else, but the fact of the matter is the states have been making promises for years and years they can't afford. The problem is you can't let the states fail, because if they fail, their municipal bonds don't get paid, and you know what? That's pension funds, that's people's retirement. It just can't happen.
Go ahead, Victoria.
It would make Lehman Brothers look like a party.
They can get paid. Neil, they can get paid. We saw this in Orange County, California. Those bondholders did get paid in the end. It was a bit of a moratorium.
Hold on a second. Let me just explain. Orange County, California did default on bonds a couple of years ago, so that's what you're referring to. Go ahead.
But eventually they were paid. I mean, the thing with states and counties is that they have tax revenue that doesn't go away. So it's not like the state evaporates. You could still honor commitments, and in the interim, you do the necessary cost
And Jack, let's get back to basics here. These states have been spending like drunken sailors, and you don't cure an alcoholic with more booze.
Absolutely. And, you know, we talk about the unions, and yes, the pension liabilities and some of those other long-term trends have been bad for states, but the state administrators are the real culprits here. They're the ones that have to throttle back on the spending for special interests to get their budgets under control.
And, Bill, we should also emphasize there's already been a bailout of these states in terms of the stimulus bill. The stimulus bill is sending billions and billions in help to the states, and they can use that money how they want.
Several billion going to California. Now, supposedly the law says that a full faith and credit bond has a prior lien on all the real estate. You don't pay the bond, I take your house. But the reality is, the political reality is, the bondholders are going to get stiffed, the pensioners are going to get their full money, and we better price that into bonds right
And
now.
Gwen, even Orange County, which did default not long ago, well, a couple of years ago, they eventually did pay back the bondholders. So not like the bondholders wouldn't eventually get paid.
Yeah, I think that we're all sort of on the same page here, which is how do we take everybody to grow-up time?
Exactly.
You're responsible for your debts. You're going to pay them. You know, you're going to look into the grave. You're going to go into debt and like actually see the concessions, or are you going to anticipate that and do something about it ahead of time? Does anybody here think we can do it without bankruptcy? I, for one, think people can grow up and do it, but maybe I'm just a dreamer.
Jack?
Schwarzenegger is exhausting every possible option. He's going to Washington, D.C. He's going to towns and cities and municipalities within California, borrowing
Right.
from them. So this is a problem. It is grow-up time, what we need. And I think if you look at some of the problems, what we've seen as precedents thus far in how bondholders are treated, contract law has been put out the window. So municipal bonds, I think, are a lot more
I
risky.
just
to
want
Bill's
to
point,
clarify
they've been
one
made to
thing,
look.
because we said it a couple times, but Victoria, you know this story. Schwarzenegger hasn't actually succeeded yet in borrowing from the municipalities.
That's what he's
he's
suggesting.
floating the proposal to borrow $2 billion from municipalities in California, and they're furious. They don't want to do it.
Take money out of local coffers. And, you know, one of the arguments is, well, that's not as bad as taking it out of state coffers. But, gee, you tend to feel it when local budgets shrink. I mean, you're going to notice that on your
Municipalities
street.
can go bust.
Not only that, but, you know,
Yes.
California municipalities are in terrible shape. Valencia, California is on the
right.
verge of bankruptcy. So what
So
are you
we're
going to do?
gonna
You're going to push
we're-
these municipalities into bankruptcy?
Exactly.
This is definitely not the answer.
Mike
We're
Ozanian.
kicking the can down the road. That's what we're
Well,
doing.
it's not just California that's doing it. We don't want to pick on West Coast. New Jersey, New York, there are a lot of places on the East Coast, and there are some states in the middle that are doing the same thing.
And the states that are in the most trouble are the states that have had the highest property taxes and the highest marginal
Isn't that
tax rates.
ironic?
To supposedly
Right.
bring in more revenue.
And now
But they
Schwarzenegger
default,
says the
spend
way
it all.
to solve this is to raise tax rates, but that's what's caused so much of the problem.
Absolutely, and you just look at what Governor Corzine is doing in New Jersey, where he's revoking rebates for property taxes. He's raising taxes on people and small business owners making more than $400,000 a year. So he's driving residents out of New Jersey, reducing his tax base and making it harder in the
And
future to
Quentin,
recover.
isn't it ironic that during the 1960s, when New Jersey had no state tax, no sales tax, and pretty good test scores on their education programs, they were doing fine, but once they got an income tax, they got into trouble.
David, I'm just running this in my.
The more-
Isn't
the
it
point
ironic
is, the
about New
more
Jersey
money
in
you
the
give to government, the
1960s?
more they have
It's
to
a different
waste.
world. It is a vastly different world, David. You have immigrant population, you have health care crises. They do have real things to address.
Hold on,
And the
Vicky,
loans
go
are
ahead.
aging.
Go
That's
ahead,
what this is
Victoria.
about
The
as
thing
much
is, we
as
talk
anything.
a lot. We talk a lot about how people will flee high tax states, and that does happen. But another real issue is that companies
Not
don't
in the South.
hire in California. They hire in other states because it's too expensive to do that here. So we don't get job creation. That's
Last
the real
word
danger.
from the Californians.